Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Civil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. As always, I hope you enjoy this legal education content, and today is the day I earned that subscription. First of all, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I hope you and yours had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I am currently visiting my parents, and I'm very happy that I am. They are wonderful, and I just got done visiting with my brother, who was here. That was very cool. So I had a great Thanksgiving with my friends and family, and I hope you did with yours. And I see so many of you in the DMs and comments of other people's chats, like Law and Lumber is watching some of his stuff. It seems like a lot of you had a really good time. So that's always a plus. Well, we're here today to learn about someone who is maybe having less a good time, namely Amber Heard. Amber Heard, as you will recall, has been adjudicated to owe Johnny Depp $10 million in change. We've already reviewed Johnny Depp's brief. I don't know if any amicus have filed for Johnny Depp, not that I'm aware of. Amber Heard has still not filed, but two amici have filed. Friends of the court, they say. Friends of Amber Heard, who think that if Amber Heard loses, it will be bad. Bad for them, bad for society. It would be an error of law. Well, in want of having Amber Heard's brief, I suppose we'll read these briefs from our amici friends and see what they have to say. So we'll read at least one of the two now. We might save the other one for later, depending on, interest and stuff. But let's see what we have so far. So here's one of the two briefs that have been filed in Virginia. Make that a little bit bigger. Great. This is a brief that has been filed by a whole bunch of people, namely the Sanctuary for Families, the Virginia National Organization for Women, the DC Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Equality Now, Esperanza United, the Feminist Majority Foundation, Battered Women's Justice Project, the Women's Equal Justice Project, National Crime Victim Law Institute, the Coalitions Against Trafficking in Women, Professor Catherine McKinnon, and the organizers of what, I'm not quite sure, professors, advocates, and professionals listed in Appendix A. Fun and exciting. Lots of people want to sign their name to this friend of the court brief why it is really, really bad that Johnny Depp would win. Okay. All right, fine. So we have the council. We've got a table of contents, table of authorities. This is written like an appeal brief should be written. So automatically, I'm a happy camper because it's written in a nice format. All right, so who are the amici? The amici are leading non-professional organizations, professors, victim advocates, and professionals around the world dedicated to advancing the safety and well-beings of survivors of domestic violence. One would think that would include Johnny Depp, notably, but perhaps not. Collectively, the amici provide a broad range of legal and other services to victims of domestic violence and are active contributors to and experts in the scholarship surrounding the dynamics of domestic violence. So they should be really good about female perpetrators and male victims, right? Because they're the leading scholars. So surely they know a lot about the female perpetrators and the male victims. Amici are concerned because the jury verdict reflects a deep and dangerous ignorance of coercive tactics and non-physical forms of abuse that are a critical component of domestic violence. Like Amber Heard. Amici also wish to advise the court of the troubling chilling effects this highly publicized verdict will have on victims of abuse seeking to protect themselves, report abuse, and raise awareness. Well, just don't lie. And, that'd be great. Amici are qualified to understand and express the interests of domestic violence victims in Virginia with respect to matters of common concern that come before this court. Amici requests the consent of all parties. Depp has opposed. A full list of amici. So it's up to the court whether or not to accept the amici or not. You would expect the court to accept it. It's well written. It's professional. Whether or not the court will consider it is a whole separate set of questions, but you would expect them to say yes. I wonder why Depp has said no. It is fairly routine for both parties to agree to amici briefs. So I'm curious why Depp has said no, but okay. Anyways, the statement and the nature of the case. Though Johnny Depp's defamation claims are facially limited to 3 statements made by Amber Heard in the Washington Post op-ed, the record in this case makes plain that Depp used his lawsuits to retaliate against Heard for obtaining a domestic temporary restraining order against him 6 years prior in an effort to escape Mr. Depp's increasingly insufferable abuse. Wow. That's one hell of a way to color the argument, man. At trial, Depp painted the traumatic events that led to Miss Heard's protective order as an elaborate hoax perpetrated by Miss Heard against Mr. Depp, the true victim. Mr. Depp's ploy was successful. Well, it seems all these leading experts in domestic violence who are academics and studies and also provide assistance and groundwork, it seems all these experts have seen through the ploy, and Mr. Depp is not, in fact, a victim. I wonder how I was so misled. Into thinking that Depp was a victim and the principal victim. All these experts clearly have seen something that I have missed. Okay. It was not successful because Mr. Depp carried his burden to demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence the alleged defamatory statements were made with actual malice, a subjective standard that requires Miss Heard to prove reckless disregard of the truth. That requires proof Miss Heard recklessly disregarded the truth. Or there's one other thing. Proof that she recklessly disregarded the truth, or proof that she recklessly disregarded the truth, or what's the other half of actual malice? She knows. She knows it's wrong. Right? Reckless disregard is how we normally get you. But there is another way under the rules. It doesn't come up very much, but it comes up here. Right? Reckless disregard, or what? You know that you're lying. Intentionality. Well, Miss Heard would have been present during the times that Mr. Depp was or was not beating her, right? If Mr. Depp was beating her, she would have been there. And if Mr. Depp was not beating her, well, she would have been there too. She's there in all these scenarios, right? If Mr. Depp wasn't beating her, she's there. Mr. Depp is beating her, she's there. Either way, she's there. So she would know if Mr. Depp is beating her or not because she was there. So actual knowledge would be the other half of that equation I see we're missing. Rather, as the post-trial interview with one juror revealed, the jury found in favor of Mr. Depp because while the jury concluded they were both abusive to each other, Heard's team failed to prove that the Depp's abuse was physical. The jury's singular focus on allegations of physical abuse is contrary to evidence presented at trial and demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of law. Does it, though? That's my domain. I'm pretty good on the law. I understand law, but I'm sure they're going to correct me. The conduct by Mr. Depp laid bare at trial in text message, audio recordings, video, and in his own testimony demonstrated that in addition to physical abuse, like what? Miss Heard was the victim of emotional, verbal, psychological, and other well-documented forms of abuse. How about Mr. Depp, though? Just out of raw curiosity. These additional types of conduct all fall within accepted definitions of abuse in Commonwealth of Virginia and the scholarship of domestic violence more generally. The trial court rejected Ms. Heard's request to provide the jury with instructions on what amounts to abuse, and as a result, the jury improperly disregarded non-physical conduct when considering whether actual abuse occurred, and more importantly, whether Ms. Heard believed the conduct amounted to it. Yeah, I don't think that's an error of law, though, because this is not a assault case. This is not a battery case. This is not a domestic violence case, right? This is not we're charging you with assault. This is not we're charging you with battery. This is not we're charging you with domestic violence, in which case those terms would have definitions normally provided by statute, right? We're charging you with defamation, right? And every case has to be considered under its own terms. So does what Johnny Depp did qualify as abuse? for some other purpose of some other law? Maybe. I mean, we'd have to get into it, right? We'd actually have to go to the actual law in play, and we'd have to go read up its definitions and consider what Depp did or did not do, and see whether or not Depp committed abuse for the purpose of some other statute, right? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But that's not the issue we're trying to resolve right now. The issue we're trying to resolve at this precise moment is defamation. Defamation goes to what the reader understands the message to be, right? We're looking at the statements in the article, in the newspaper article. And the question is, when Miss Heard was writing these things, what does the reasonable man, the reasonable, ordinary, common man of normal, ordinary, common prudence, right? What does the reasonable man understand those allegations to be? If they understand the allegations to be physical violence, and Mr. Depp didn't do physical violence, that's defamation, right? If the statement of fact is understood by the jury to be physical violence, if that's the understood statement of fact, and the jury finds no physical violence, then defamation, right? Because what you said was false versus the truth. The jury gets to interpret both what was understood and what was true in reality, because that's the nature of defamation. So the jury gets to be the twin fact finder in this role, right? They get to be the twin fact finder in that they decide what the standard is and also decide whether or not the person has met the standard, right? Because defamation goes to what a person communicates and how it's understood by that audience as the reasonable, ordinary, normal, common person. So what is this message trying to say? That's a question of fact. What happened in reality? That's a question of fact. Do these twin concepts of fact match or not? If they don't match, then you have a defamation problem. So whether or not Johnny Depp physically abused or verbally abused or emotionally abused or psychologically abused or any other kind of abuse that there might be for any other statute that we might be considering is a wholly separate legal question. We have to figure out what was being alleged. What was Heard writing about? What was Heard alleging that Depp did? If the jury understood the allegation to be psychological, verbal, whatever, right, then they might very well find that Johnny Depp did that. But what was communicated in the message is for the jury to determine. So if they determine the message is physical abuse, then they are actually right to ignore all the non-physical abuse because that's the relevant standard for the question we're asking at this moment. That might have been a little lengthy, but I wanted to explain it a couple different ways so that we could understand the difference in asking a question under a defamation standard versus asking a question if we were talking about assault, battery, domestic violence, or something else, right? I went to some length to explain it because it's important that we remember what the question we're asking is. Great. Because they seem to have forgotten the question we're asking. The question isn't necessarily, well, the question isn't only did Mr. Depp abuse Ms. Heard, the question is what constitutes abuse in this context, and that is for the jury to determine as well, which is why the court was quite right to deny providing an instruction because it wouldn't make any sense. The amici requests submitting that in conducting its independent review of the record, this honorable court will find ample, uncontroverted evidence of various forms of abuse suffered by Ms. Heard at the hands of Mr. Depp. Maybe that's true, and that gets you one half of the puzzle. The other half of the puzzle is, what are the statements in the newspaper conveying? What does a reader understand them to convey? And that's, not as you can point to all the abuse in the world, but the principal question is, how do you read? The first question is, how do you read the article? And then you go look for facts that match that. So maybe she suffered abuse by some definitions Although I think whatever definitions you apply with respect to Ms. Heard, if you're applying those definitions equally to Mr. Depp, you have to admit that Depp is abused, and I would argue more so. So, assuming we want to have one definition of abuse, which seems like a good thing to do, that definition is going to swing both ways. So if you want to broaden out the definition of abuse to include all these things, then okay. But if you're going to remain consistent in that definition, then you have to understand what Heard did respect to Depp with respect to the definition you just wrote. And I think you find that there was a lot more going the other way under your own definition, advocates of domestic violence prevention. So, if we're going to be consistent, it's a little bit hard to see how you don't come out and say, okay, well, pretty much any definition I write is going to make Heard look worse. It's hard to write a definition where Heard doesn't look worse because she did worse. Okay, such a finding will not only rectify the injustice served in this case, but also send a message to those who seek to improperly use defamation or other legal proceedings as means to retaliate. Indeed, an abuser's misuse of legal process to further control and coerce their partners, referred to as legal abuse, is itself widely recognized as a form of domestic violence. I wonder if Amber Heard might be doing that as we speak. The hypocrisy of this is jarring, because it's like it's really hard to write a definition that makes Depp guilty and Amber innocent at the same time. They seem to only want to apply this one way, and that is very annoying to me. You're the ones creating the standard. You can create any standard you want, but once you do that, you kind of have to apply it both ways, man. Yeah. Or at least you should, if we're going to be rational and logical. As the New York Appellate Division recognized in Sargillia, why New York is okay. Virginia is not in New York last time I checked, but okay. Sexual assaults remain vastly underreported, primarily due to victims' fear of retaliation. It does not escape us that defamation suits like the instant one may constitute a form of retaliation against those who wish to speak out. Similarly, in her report to the General Assembly, which Virginia isn't a member of that either, lol, UN Special Rapporteur? What the hell is that? UN Special Rapporteur. What the fuck kind of position is that? UN Special Rapporteur on the promotion and protection of the right of freedom of opinion and expression, Irene Khan, warned of a pervasive twist that women who publicly denounce alleged perpetrators of sexual violence are increasingly subject to defamation suits or charged with criminal libel or false reporting crimes. Well, don't lie. Don't lie. It is possible. I know such a thought should never be expressed out loud, but brace yourself. It is possible. A woman might just flat out lie because they're angry and they see this as a mechanism to punish or discredit them for their own advantage or sense of revenge. But a woman would never do that because they're holy and pure and stuff. Yeah. This phenomenon creates a troubling, chilling effect on survivors of abuse seeking access to justice to protect themselves and prosecute abuse. Already, clients of Amici have expressed fear as to how Depp v. Heard verdict may impact their ability or willingness to pursue legal remedies against domestic violence. A meritorious reversal of this case. Okay, we're going to try to get into the merits, which have been widely publicized and closely watched by victim support and advocacy groups, Where is Johnny Depp's victim support? I'm going to keep asking this question. It's going to get annoying by the end, I'm sure, but these are the groups that are supposedly speaking for victims. So where is Johnny Depp's voice in any of this? Is going to be a repeating question. So seek help and encourage them like they're brave enough to do the same. Okay, well, whatever. That's fine. All right. Assignment of error. Amici supports Ms. Heard with respect to the assignment of error number 14, which reads, the trial court erred in denying the motion to strike and set aside the jury's verdict with regard to Mr. Depp's failure to prove actual malice by clear and convincing evidence. Okay. Ms. Heard's statement, in fact, is accurate and incorporated. Fine. On appeal, this court may overturn a trial court's denial of motion to set aside a jury verdict if denial is plainly wrong or without evidence to support it. Yeah. The standard is clearly met in this case. Lol, no. Liable under Virginia law requires an actionable statement that's both false and defamatory, made with requisite intent. Yes? Whereas here, a public figure brings the defamation case, the requisite intent is actual malice. A subjective inquiry which requires the plaintiff to prove defendant, in fact, entertains serious doubts as to truth of publication. That's the standard for reckless disregard. Where's the other half, my friend? Actual knowledge. How about that? As the plaintiff and a public figure, it is Mr. Depp's burden to prove the statements were false by preponderance of evidence and prove actual malice by clear and convincing evidence. Yes? Yeah. Because the question whether evidence in the record in a defamation case is sufficient to support finding of actual malice is a question of law. Correct, it is. Correct. There has to be enough for a jury to reach that conclusion. So it is a question of law. Is there enough? And then whether or not it's true is up to the jury to find. But you have to meet the bare minimum threshold, which I think we're there. Appellate courts must conduct independent examination of the entire record. The court does so by examining the facts pertinent to the jury award and exercising independent judgment to determine whether the record establishes actual malice with convincing clarity. Fair? It does, though. And then, in their footnote, they finally cite the actual state. They finally state the actual thing. They finally state the actual law. They state the actual half of it, right? In their footnote, they finally tell you the other half. Actual malice requires a defendant made an allegatory defamatory statement with either knowledge it was false or reckless disregard. Right? Up till now, they've only been talking about this back half, reckless disregard. It's like, oh, you need to find reckless disregard. You need to find reckless disregard. No, you don't. Knowledge of falsity will be just fine. Thank you very much. Who says that? What backwards court said that? Oh, it was the U.S. Supreme Court. Oh, okay. Lol. All right, argument. The jury verdict was plainly wrong to ignore uncontroverted evidence of widely recognized forms of abuse. Are they going to get into the issue of the question is, how is the article understood? Right? Once again, and I'll keep saying this, right? Words have different definitions in different statutes and in different contexts. And this is very important. One of the most critical questions of law is asking the right question. Asking the right question is a huge part of the ballgame in law, because the question drives the analysis. And one of the things that's most helpful to remember is what exactly is the question we're asking. Like the line from iRobot, my answers are limited. You must ask the right questions. In law, that's very, very true. The questions matter a whole lot. And the exact words used and the exact wording matters a whole lot. This is like when you go at the U.S. Supreme Court, you see the question presented. It's literally in the brief, right? It's one of the first things in the brief to the Supreme Court is what question are you asking the Supreme Court to consider? It's literally called the question presented. There's a little space for it, right? And you literally just write the question. What is the question? The question presented. And then, at least at the U.S. Supreme Court, and I imagine other courts are similar, but I can talk about the U.S. Supreme Court competently, right? The plaintiff writes their question. The defendant writes their question. And sometimes the Supreme Court says, nah, I don't like either of those. This is the question. We're going to pose the question because, we're the Supreme Court of BCAD. So this is the question now. Congratulations. And, everyone moves forward with their life. But the question is pretty important. So if you're looking to become a good lawyer or a good understander of law, make sure that you understand the question that's being asked. It's very, very important. All right, so the defamation claims put front and center the question of whether Miss Heard believed she was the victim of abuse. No, that's part of it. That's part of it. But in defamation, the question is not only what Miss Heard believed, but what the reader or listener understood. The reasonable, ordinary, common, normal person of ordinary, normal prudence, the man on the bus. What did they understand it to mean? Did they understand it to mean? Verbal, physical, psychological, religious, I don't know, whatever. What did they understand to mean? Yet the trial court refused to provide the jury with instruction on the full scope of what qualifies as abuse. Correct. In this context, it wouldn't make any sense. Because the question is, what is abuse? What does that mean? That is part of the question. That's part what the jury has to do. The court defining it would be an error in this context. It wouldn't be in some other context. It wouldn't be in a domestic violence situation. It wouldn't be in a battery situation. It wouldn't be in a lot of situations where it's like, okay, what we mean by abuse is exactly this. Do you find that, jury? This is not that case. The jury was instead to reason by negative inference based on instructions it received on the elements of falsity and actual malice. As a result, the jury's verdict completely ignored uncontroverted evidence that Miss Heard endured numerous forms of well-recognized non-physical abuse, including emotional, psychological, and verbal. Well, if the jury reached the conclusion the article was alleging physical abuse, then they were actually correct to ignore that because it would be legally non-relevant. What makes something relevant in law is whether or not it makes a fact in dispute more or less likely. Either way will be fine. That is the nature of what makes something relevant. Does it make a fact in dispute more likely, or does it make a fact in dispute less likely? Okay, if the jury understands the article to be talking about physical abuse premise, then emotional abuse, psychological abuse, whatever is legally irrelevant, because whether or not psychological abuse occurred or not does nothing to tell you whether physical abuse occurred or not. So you ignore it because it's irrelevant. It does not make the fact in dispute, which at this point would be physical abuse, more or less likely. So you should ignore it because it's non-relevant. No one cares. If that's the definition you understand the article be talking about, then no one cares. The jury's verdict was plainly wrong. Undisputed evidence subject. Now, what they are not doing here, and is very annoying, and I doubt they're going to do it because I don't think they can. What they're not doing is saying, okay, here's what the standard of abuse should have been legally. Like the judge should have given this instruction because legally this is how it's understood. But it's not understood legally because abuse is not legal in this question. It's more fact. The court's independent examination will reveal the records replete with audio recordings, video, text message, and other indisputable evidence establishing that non-physical abuse suffered by Miss Heard. Miss Heard testified, and Mr. Depp admitted to numerous instances of vicious name-calling, manipulative attempts to control her career. I don't know whether or not those are okay. Are they manipulative attempts to control her career? That's a little bit in the eye of the beholder, too. Accusations she had been unfaithful, which, yeah, and threatening behavior. For example, Mr. Depp repeatedly degraded Miss Heard verbally. And then they say, this is interesting. While beyond the focus of this amici, Miss Heard was also physically and sexually abused. Why is that beyond the focus? Why is that beyond the focus of your amici? You don't want to have to prove physical abuse, do you? You want to win it on the emotional abuse angle, which, fair enough. You're the advocates, right? This is one of the things about being a lawyer too, right? You get to define your battlefield in a lot of ways. Like, I, as a lawyer, kind of want to win. So I think if to the extent I were interested in writing a brief for Miss Heard, which I really am not, but to the extent I was, I'd be probably focusing much more on the physical and sexual abuse. Because, like, it's a little bit hard to understand how a jury could define abuse to not include that, right? Because that would seem to be more vicious. But they don't want to win on that ground. They want to expand out the definition of law. So they're more interested in expanding out the law than they are in winning the case before them, which, okay. I mean, that's a way to go, I suppose. But it's an interesting choice. And then apparently the physical abuse is in the nature of headbutting. Wow, guys. He might have headbutted her once. Whoa. I'm feeling the physical abuse all the way over here, guys. Mr. Depp stated in recording, I left last night. Honestly, I swear to you, because I just couldn't take the idea of more physicality, more physical abuse on each other. We had a fight on the train which was physical, indicating at very least Depp engaged in physical altercations, which is not necessarily abuse, incidentally. You could even split the difference further. You could believe that there was physicality without it being abuse. You could. I mean, because the alternative is a little bit silly. The alternative would be any physicality of any description isn't necessarily abusive, which seems a little hardcore. Miss Heard testified that Depp abused her with a bottle, saying, I'll kill you. Yeah, we didn't really believe that for many, many reasons. Miss Heard recounting numerous instances of abuse, testifying Miss Depp slapped her. We didn't believe her. See, anything that goes to Miss Heard's credibility is kind of a long shot. Because the jury is the finder of fact. And one of the things the jury is the finder of fact gets to do is assess credibility. And so all these statements from Miss Heard, the jury has the absolute right to ignore. The jury has the right to think that Miss Heard is a lying liar who lies, if they want. Words coming from Mr. Depp's mouth are much more helpful, because it's like, well, this is what Depp says, and, come on. But, yeah. It's not great. All these statements from Heard are like, who cares? So basically our physical and sexual abuse is supported by ample evidence. Is one time we might have headbutted each other. Wow, I'm really feeling it over here on the Court of Appeals level. Let me tell you what, man, you totally persuaded me. I've changed my mind. Oof. All right, where were we? In an audio recording, Depp called Heard an effing C word. Truth is an absolute defense in defamation. Posit. Truth is an absolute defense when it comes to abuse. If it's true, it's not abusive. Yeah. In another recording, you stupid F. Again, maybe truthful words are less abusive than non-truthful words. There's a legal proposition for you. Depp calling her an effing C word and a stupid fuck. Yeah. In another audio recording, Depp says, "Shut up, fat ass," when Depp told him to put cigarettes out on someone else instead. Is that abuse? Okay. In text communication, Depp told Heard, "You sicken me. Leave me the effing be, Officer Squarehead." We have very low standards for abuse over here on Team Amber Heard. I'm not saying these are signs necessarily of a good marriage, although, and I've never been married, but I would imagine, and I wouldn't know for sure, but I would imagine that in the course of being married to someone, there might be a harsh word said here or there. I mean, this is not necessarily great, but you're not exactly selling me on the proposition that like everything is completely crap either. These words are kind of harsh in some respects, but they're also kind of earned, and I don't. In an audio recording, Depp accused Heard of having an effing lover while describing her feelings as screaming like a banshee. Accurate. Referencing exchange text and audio recordings, Depp confirmed that recent argument with Heard was a bloodbath. Probably didn't mean that literally, you idiots. Yeah. Do people in good marriages record each other? Probably not. That's a fair point. Probably not. That's also not a great sign. Fair. Yeah. In a text message, Depp admitted the drugs and alcohol turned him into an aggro engine, into an effing blackout, who sprayed rage at the one I loved. I think Heard was gaslighting him a lot on that too. Depp wrote an apology to Miss Heard, saying, I don't want to be conditioned to continue that behavior. Therefore, I'll put a heavy work in with Schrank. I'm sorry for being less. I'm an effing savage. Gonna lose that. No, you are right. I'm well aware I should have been bigger in that moment and will never again manifest negative experiences. It can be done. Dude, he sounds so broken. Knowing what we know now, he sounds so broken. And these words just sound so the result of manipulation. This is on a lot of this is misquoted. Someone in chat says a lot of this is misquoted. Oh, this brief contains a lot of misinformation. It might well do, but even misquoted, it's like it just feels wrong. It's not exactly unheard of for a lawyer to pick a thing there or pick a word there that will help them, but it's not a great sign when you've done all that and you're still like, dude, that really got screwed, man. It hurts. It's not great when you know as a lawyer that they went and found the absolute best they could, because of course they did, right? We're assuming competence, which is reasonable. So what they probably did is went and looked for the best possible quotes they could possibly find. And are they taken out of context? Yeah, surely they are. But that's partly like what you do. But it's not a great sign when you do that and you're still like, first of all, it's not that much. Second of all, having heard what I've heard, man, this just sounds like a guy who's broken. It sounds like a guy It sounds like a guy who's desperate for his wife's love. It sounds like, I'm not sure why this example comes to mind, but it sounds like a daughter who is like desperate for his father's love, and his father just never gives her any. And it feels like a child, or maybe a child is a better way to put it. Feels like a child who's desperate for a parent's love. There, that's better. Feels like a child who's desperate for a parent's love, and the parent never gives them love, no matter what they do. And they're so desperate they'll try anything. And it feels like these sentences are torn out of desperation. So they don't come off as admissions to me. They come off as pleadings, begging to someone who, for whatever reason, will never give him what he's owed. And it's disparaging, or it's disheartening. So, like, yeah, I have no particular problem believing that the quotes are taken from out of context. It's just sad that, one, this is their best, and two, even their best just makes me feel worse for Johnny Depp. I feel like I want to give Johnny Depp a hug by reading this. This is not exactly what you want me to feel writing this brief. You don't want me reading this brief and being like, I really want to give Johnny Depp a hug. That's not the reaction you're looking for as an advocate. Yeah. We'll skip more of that. I guess we have to read more of this. That sucks. We have to give the devil its due. Okay, let's read more of this and find the statements that are going to really win this for Amber Heard. God help me. In text communications to a friend while dating Miss Heard, Mr. Depp said, "Let's burn Amber. Let's drown her before we burn her. I will fuck her burnt corpse afterwards to make sure she's dead." He later texted that hopefully that C's rotting corpse is decomposing in the effing trunk of Honda Civic, which, a Honda Civic is too nice for her. What would be the right interior of what would be like the right car to put her in the trunk of? Maybe a rusted out Yugo. Yeah. Some sort of Russian piece of shit. My volume lowered? Is everyone else's volume okay on stream? Or is there a problem with the volume level? Check 1, 2. It looks okay. Check 1, 2. Looks okay. Is there a problem? Okay. Good. Let's see. Where was I? In text communications, Mr. Depp referred to Miss Heard as the idiot cow, that he would smack the ugly C around before he let her in, and asked, "Did that worthless hooker arrive?" Referencing Miss Heard. Accurate. Accurate. Idiot cow. Fact. Yeah. Yep. Mr. Depp also subjected Miss Heard to emotional and psychological abuse, including repeated alarm and violent attempts to exert control over her. In an audio recording, Mr. Depp brandished a knife and implored Miss Heard to cut him with it. Despite Miss Heard's begging Mr. Depp to put the knife down, Mr. Depp refused and told Miss Heard to cut me. If you don't, I will. Oh my God. Look at this fucking footnote. What fucking thing did I just follow? What the fuck? These are thank you for the donation, Cindy Lee. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Look at these fucking footnote. Undoubtedly, Mr. Depp choice of language, hooker, C word, to fuck her burnt corpse and violent ideations with respect to her are consistent with understandings of gender violence and plainly unblemished misogyny? What the fuck? Misogyny? Dude. And then there's this PDF from this woman's aid thing, noting that women differ from men in that they experience domestic abuse as part of an embedded structural inequalities against their sex, such that the phenomena of sexism and misogyny in our society creates a culture and context that enables and entitles men to demean, objectify, abuse, and control women. What the fuck are you writing about? And you click on this link. Domestic abuse is a gendered crime. Every case of domestic abuse should be taken seriously and each individual given access. All victims should be able to access support, whilst both men and women may experience incidents of interpersonal violence and abuse. Women are considerably more likely to experience repeated and severe forms of abuse. Domestic abuse perpetrated by men against women is rooted in women's unequal status in society and part of a wider social program of male violence against women and girls. The United Nations defines gender-based violence the following way. The definition of discrimination includes gender-based violence, that is, women, is directed against women because she's a woman, or affects women disproportionately. I like how gender-based violence only affects women. That's a neat trick. Gender-based violence means directed against women. Gender-based violence only affects women. That's a very neat trick. Includes acts that inflict physical, mental, or sexual harm or suffering. Man, this is some bullshit over here. This is pissing me off. No, words in the link are not counted to the total. It's just the source. But I clicked on the source, which was a mistake because it just pissed me off. Male as a gender? No, it's not. Lol. Who told you male was a gender? Whose lies have you been listening to? The United Nations definition on gender violence only talks about women. It must mean male's not a gender. Male's not a gender. Lol. Well, I suppose that's a neat trick, because the conservatives have been saying there's exactly two genders, and I suppose now there's exactly one gender. So, okay, that's great. As depicted in photographs, after Miss Heard finished filming a movie with Billy Bob Thornton, Mr. Depp severed his finger during a drunken fight with Miss Heard, and then wrote in the mirror with a mix of paint and blood from a severed finger, starring Billy Bob and Easy. It's very irritating, folks. It's very irritating. I'm gonna be able to get through this in one piece. Lol, no, I'm gonna need a drink. How How long does this crap go on? Oh God, don't ask me that question. We're on page 13 of like something. I don't know. I think we're gonna be here for a while. As demonstrated in videos and photos, Mr. Depp's finger was severed during a violent outburst in which he caused approximately $50,000 worth of property damage to a home the couple was renting, including smears of blood on the wall, plaster damage, and a broken ping pong table. I feel you, Sandra. I feel you hard. In text communications, Mr. Depp forbade Miss Heard from acting in movies and said, "No goddamn meetings, no movies." A recording captured Mr. Depp saying that he becomes irrational when Miss Heard is doing movies. "I become jealous and fucking crazy, weird, and we fight a lot more." I know he had some thoughts about you stripping for the camera, which is a reasonable concern for pragmatic reasons as well as the fact that he's your wife or husband rather. So he might object to it on the fact that you're married to him and he doesn't want people to see your body. He also might have a pragmatic objection because it might not be great for your career or provide problems in your career. So, and also being your husband, I think he might have some insight or input into your movie career, both because he's your husband and an accomplished actor in his own right. So if I were married to Amber Heard, and God help me, but even though I have no experience in acting, I still might have some opinions on the subject, and I would think that my opinions should be taken into consideration, given that we're married to each other. Just a random thought. I think maybe a husband and wife should be able to talk to each other about stuff, and they might be able to express opinions about what the other one is doing, and they might have some feedback that should be taken into consideration in the confines of a marriage. That sounds like a good idea, but maybe that's just me. I'd really like you if you didn't do that, honey. Maybe I should consider not doing that because my husband doesn't like it or my wife doesn't like it, and maybe that's something, or we should talk about it or stuff. I don't know. It just random musings from a guy. Just ignore me. Mr. Depp confirmed in his testimony that when Miss Heard was working, Mr. Depp would accuse her of being unfaithful and having affairs with co-stars like James Franco. Further still, Depp repeatedly acted in a threatening manner towards Miss Heard, engaging in physical violent outbursts and destroying property in Heard's presence. It's just me, Ian? Oh, okay, well, thanks. Mr. Depp's bodyguard testified during an argument. Depp called Miss Heard fucking washed up and a fucking C word before he threw down every rack of clothing and shoes in her closet from the second floor of a loft apartment. Mr. Depp was captured on video, violently slamming cabinets in front of Miss Heard. Mr. Depp admitted that during this argument with Heard in trailer, he punched a bathroom sconce and ripped off a mounted foam off the wall and repeatedly smashed it against the wall because another woman had touched Miss Heard in an intimate manner. I mean, I might get a little jealous that there could be some thoughts there. Again, if I were in a serious relationship with somebody and someone else were touching them intimately, I could see myself expressing myself with some sort of physical aggression that or disappointment or upsetness. Not necessarily violence towards anyone, but I could see myself being angry. Okay. These examples of Mr. Depp's undisputed conduct were not an exhibitation of common couple violence experienced in some relationships. They're not. There's a footnote, apparently. See Michael Johnson. Patriarchal terrorism, and common couple violence. Patriarchal terrorism. Wow. Commenting that some conflicts may occasionally get out of hand, leading to minor forms of violence, in the contrast to serious or life-threatening forms of violence exhibiting chronic behavior. Thank you, Sandra, for the 10 gift memberships. It's appreciated. Also, noting partner relationships may be characterized by several distinct classes of violence that reflect variation in the number and extent of violent acts. I don't even know what to do with a sense like patriarchal terrorism. I don't even know what to do with that. By contrast, Mr. Depp's behavior fits into a paradigm. The paradigm of serious chronic abuse designed to dominate one's partner and exert general control over the relationship, which is manifest in the use of a wide range of power and control tactics, many of which are non-physical. In fact, Mr. Depp's undisputed conduct is also consistent with numerous factors scholars have identified to assess the risk of grave danger and death in an abusive relationship, including: has the physical violence increased in severity over the past year, and or has a weapon or threat from a weapon ever been used? Is he drunk? Is he drunk every day or almost every day? Is he drunk? Apparently, the numerous factors scholars have identified include whether he is drunk every day. Does he control most or all of your daily activities? Does he use drugs? Is he violent or constantly jealous? Does he say, if I can't have you, no one can have you? Has he ever threatened or tried to commit suicide? The one-way gender specificity of it is pissing me off, in case that was unclear for some reason. The one-way gender specificity is pissing me off. Guys, I don't know what the problem is, but like, if this amicus brief is trying to make me less misogynistic, it is not working. I don't know if that's its goal or not, but the one-way bias of it all is making me really resentful of these people. The unwillingness to consider men's feelings or to consider them equally or to apply these standards both ways around is really pissing me off. It's making me quite antagonistic to the groups that are writing it and the causes they support. The undisputed fact is that Depp brandished a knife and implored her to cut him, or else he would do it itself, evinces not only propensity for physical violence, but also attempts to manipulate Heard. Dude, this is like... you know, maybe this maybe this is just gaslighting. Maybe that's what this is. It's just gaslighting. And it's really hard to it's really hard. It's really hard to read. It's just making me mad. And then I feel like they're judging me. I feel like they're judging me. I'm like, look at him. He's getting mad. He said it's not helping him become less misogynistic. I feel like I don't know. I don't even know how 100% how I feel. I'm very annoyed. Okay. Barry says I don't feel these women and me are the same species. Something like that. Barry. Where was I? Depp was also no stranger to jealousy, as he himself texted that he had become irrational when Miss Heard is doing movies. I felt jealous and crazy, and we fight a lot more. Even putting aside whether Miss Heard believed that she was being abused, which is all that the law requires in this case. No, that's not true. That's not true. Her subjective belief is part of the puzzle. The message she's saying is the other half. What is she saying? What message is she conveying? How is it understood by the reader? So her subjective belief is half the equation, not the whole thing. They want to make her subjective belief the entire thing. I guess they want to rewrite all of defamation law at this point. Okay, that's yeah. You like the blue background? Yeah, I'm gonna start mixing up the backgrounds when I'm streaming and stuff. So I'm glad you like it. Well, it's one I created recently, and it seemed like a good one. Anyways, where was I? Clearly determines that Mr. Depp engaged in abusive conduct and Miss Heard was in fact abused. Within some definitions of the word abuse, maybe, although even within those definitions of the word abuse, no. Which is, I guess, where me and the article, I guess this is really where me and the authors of this brief really have the hugest disconnect. Because even from their own definitions, I'm not sure I find abuse. And they think it's a rampant, clear, egregious, obvious abuse. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, there's just not much here. Right? So even within their own definitions of abuse, I'm not sure that we're there. I mean, I haven't been thinking about it like as long as I was thinking about it when I was thinking about it for the trial, right? Because when I was thinking about it for the trial, I was thinking about, like reality and real definitions that actually apply in the real world. But if I like take on their definition, it's like, this is really the hill you want to die on, is kind of my feeling. Like, this is abuse? Even under your own definition, this is abuse? I mean, if this is abuse, who isn't abused? And who isn't an abuser? You know? Anyways. So even within their own definitions, I'm not sure it works. And then, of course, those definitions are not the real definitions, so that's also a problem. Let's read on more. Virginia law, as well as national and international authorities and scholars, recognize Depp's conduct as abuse. Blech. Virginia law recognizes non-physical abuse, like that suffered by Miss Heard. For instance, Virginia courts have recognized the evidence of violence or apprehension of bodily harm are not indisputable ingredients in divorce suits charging cruelty, and that mental anguish, repeated and unrelenting neglect, and humiliation can amount to cruelty, as that term is used in divorce law. Cruelty, as that term is used in divorce law, is the keys. That's the key. That's the key, my friends. That is the key. Remember, one of the most key things you can do in law, if you want to be a good lawyer, or if you want to understand law, one of the most important things you can do is remember, what question are you asking? It's one of the most critical things you can do. And it's one of the most important things you do because the question often drives the answer. And so they say, okay, cruelty, as that term is used in divorce law. Okay. Sure. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a divorce law expert, thank God, mostly by choice, because I don't want to be, because it's a sad place, and I don't like the sadness, and it hurts me too much. But sure, okay, it's the definition of cruelty in divorce law. Did Depp engage in cruelty within the context of divorce law? I don't know. We could go figure that out. We could go analyze that question separately. But whether or not he did or not doesn't have too much to do with whether or not he committed abuse within the context of this defamation suit. So they are bleeding from one form of law to another without any connection thread, because I think it is a valid legal tactic to use something in one field of law in an unrelated field of law, but you have to connect the thread, right? You have to say, okay, this is the standard in XYZ law. Now we're in ABC law, but you should apply that standard over here for the following reasons, right? Because then it just becomes another form of persuasive law, right? It's roughly equivalent to reading a case from outside the jurisdiction on a question, right? So if I'm trying to determine what abuse is in Virginia, and I read some California case that says, okay, abuse means da 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 da, right? Well, that's a Californian court, not a Virginia court. But lawyers do this all the time, right? We do it all the time. We say, okay, we're trying to determine what abuse means in Virginia. All right, here's something a California court said, and here's something a Texas court said, and here's something a Maine court said, and here's something a North Carolina court said, and here's something a Florida court said, right, on this, and here's, and so we think these represent the best ideas, and we want you, Virginia, to adopt that so it becomes Virginia's idea, right? So we reason by analogy from Virginia law to all the other laws, and Virginia can do whatever it wants, but what other states do is informative. It's persuasive authority, right? So you can do a similar thing between fields of law. You could say something like, here's the definition of cruelty in divorce. We're trying to determine what abuse means in the context of defamation law. So that definition of cruelty in the divorce law is persuasive authority with respect to the question of abuse in the defamation law. But you still have to connect the thread. You can't just say it. You got to say, and here's why, right? You got to say, here's why this is analogous. Here's why this should be applied. And they just, they're answering the wrong question at this point. Because they have no connection thread, they're answering the wrong question. The question they're answering is, what is the definition of cruelty in divorce law? I have now had that answer provided to me. I don't care. Because I'm not doing a divorce case now, am I? All right. And then they cite some other Virginia law recounting how mental anguish, repeated and unrelenting neglect, and humiliation may be as bad as physical words and bruises. And how recognizing how such cruelty is abuse. What cruelty? The cruelty is that term is used in the divorce law. So all this stuff is dealing with divorce law. So not what we need. Virginia courts regularly take verbal and emotional abuse into consideration in family law decisions. We're answering the wrong question again. Husband engaged in violent verbal outbursts and spoke language we could reasonably interpret as threatening. The cumulative effect on these incidents and other marital strife provides the wife ample justification or excuse to leave. In a divorce case. Divorce for cause. Right? We have no-fault divorce in every state, but to the best of my knowledge, no-fault divorce continues to exist. I know it continues to exist in Virginia, and it continues to exist in Texas. And to the best of my knowledge, it continues to exist everywhere. So you can sue for a no-fault divorce, but the old forms of divorce still are on the books. So you can get a divorce no fault, but you can also get a divorce for cause if you want. And there are some benefits, incidentally. In Virginia, for example, you have to live apart for a year. I think if there's kids, it's been a while since I read my Virginia divorce law because I don't really care that much, but I think it's like if you have children, you have to live apart a year before you can get a divorce for no fault. But if it's a divorce for cause, you don't have to wait. So you can file immediately in Virginia if it's for cause. You might also want to for cause divorce for religious reasons or for other reasons. But yeah. So, okay, we're trying to determine whether the wife has cause in a for cause divorce. This is a 2003 case, apparently. Or maybe it's a 1986 case, but either way, okay, husband engaged in violent verbal outbreaks and spoke language which can interpret as threatening. The cumulative effects leads to a for-cause divorce. Okay. Noted. Doesn't have a lot to do with what we're trying to do right now. Virginia state and local authorities that provide similar advice and guidance to victims of abuse. The Virginia Department of Social Services defines domestic violence similar to those above, focusing on patterns intended to exert power and control in an intimate relationship. In a paper called Understanding the Problem of Domestic Violence. Where are we defining? We're defining domestic violence in the context of domestic violence. We're answering the wrong question again. These abusive behaviors may include, but not limited to, physical abuse, assault, verbal assault, threats, intimidation, destruction of property, and violence towards other significant people. The Department of Social Services explicitly states it's very important to recognize that domestic violence is not always physical, and verbal, emotional, and economic abuse can have long-lasting effects, even if the victim is never physically or sexually assaulted. We're answering the wrong questions. Yeah, the requirements for no-fault divorce do differ in every state. I was specifically saying Virginia. I was specifically saying what the advantages in Virginia are for no-fault versus fault. And yeah, but yeah, obviously your state law may vary. But I thought I was clear. I was like, well, in Virginia, and it's been a while in Virginia, but this is what I remember, blah, blah, blah. So I wasn't trying to speak for every state, but fair enough. Where was I? Virginia is not unique in recognizing that victims may be abused both in physical and non-physical ways. Government agencies, international organizations, nonprofit organizations, and domestic violence help centers have all endorsed definitions of domestic violence that include various forms of non-physical abuse. For example, the U.S. Department of Justice defines domestic abuse as a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that's used by one partner to gain or maintain control of another partner. But the question is, what was the paper alleging? What was it alleging? How was it understood? And so, like, yeah, these might be potentially valid definitions of abuse. The question for one of the questions for the jury is, what was the article alleging? I believe her brief is due. That was due on Wednesday. I haven't seen a copy of it. I thought her brief was due on Wednesday, but I haven't seen a copy of it, so I'm not so sure. Maybe I got the date wrong. The DOJ defines emotional abuse as undermining an individual's sense of self-worth and or self-esteem, including through constant criticism, diminishing one's abilities, or name-calling. The DOJ defines psychological abuse as including causing fear by intimidation, threatening physical harms to self, partner, children, or partner's family or friends, destructions of pet property, and forcing isolations from family, friends, or school and or work. Similarly, the DOJ recognizes other patterns of coercive behavior that influence another person may constitute abuse. Okay, I mean, for some definitions, sure, but what does a person reading an article understand? If a person reading an article says person A abused person B, what do they think? I'll tell you what I think. I think physical abuse. I don't think, oh yeah, it's also could be a whole bunch of other things. I think physical abuse. It was due Wednesday, but no one's posted a copy yet. Fair enough. Incidentally, for whatever it's worth, I got these Amici briefs, or a link to these Amici briefs, from an anti-Depp subreddit, which I thought was kind of hilarious. There's an anti-Depp subreddit out there, and that's where I got a copy of these briefs from. Was from the anti-Depp subreddit, which I thought was hilarious. So, yeah, little ironies in life. Let me make this alert box a little bit bigger so make sure to get everyone's chats all the way in as much as we can. Okay. Let's see if I can change these settings on the fly too. Didn't like how it cut off his settings. I'll make the alert box bigger at least, so hopefully more words will get in. Come on, chat. There we go. Yeah, Depth Delusion. That's right. Depth Delusion. That was the name of the subreddit. I couldn't quite remember off the top of my head, but yeah, Depth Delusion. Apparently, I made the mistake of reading some of the Reddit comments. The Reddit comments had a much different reaction to the briefs than I did. But apparently, Depth Delusion is out there loud and proud. So, okay. I am at my folks. Yeah, I'm at my folks' place. I'm visiting them for the holidays. So I hope your Thanksgiving is going great as well. I'll be here for a couple more days. One of the nice things about it, my life is I can stream from anywhere, right? I got a web camera and I got a decent lav mic. It's not quite as good as the one I have at home, but it worked fine. And, hey, we're doing fine. That sub is toxic as F. I swear I got that impression. Yeah. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention defines domestic abuse as abuse regression that occurs in romantic relationships. The CDC recognized domestic abuse includes psychological aggression, defined as the use of verbal and nonverbal communication with the intent to harm a partner mentally or emotionally, and or to exert control over a partner. Wonderfully color coordinated. Thanks. I brought my light box from home, so I had better lighting. Because last time I streamed at my parents' house, the lighting wasn't very good. So I brought my light box from home because it folds up very nicely. It's on telescope. It's telescopic and everything folds. So threw it into my checked luggage, and I have my lighting set up from home so that we get good lighting in here. So hey, I try for you guys. Can my parents say hi? I can yell down and say something if they want to say hi. Um, the United Nations also defines domestic abuse, domestic violence, and/or intimate partner violence as a pattern of behavior in any relationship that's used to gain or maintain power and control over an intimate partner. Much like the Department of Justice, the United Nations has determined that abuse includes a wide range of conduct, including emotional, psychological, economic, sexual, or physical action or threats of action intended to influence another person. Moreover, influencing can take many forms and includes conduct intended to frighten, intimidate, terrorize, manipulate, hurt, blame, wound, or humiliate the victim. With these definitions, man, I mean, we're all abusing each other all the time, man. These definitions are so elastic. You know, to evaluate whether abuse has occurred, the United Nations asks whether one partner has conducted any of the physical and or non-physical acts below. Embarrassed or made fun of you in front of you or your friends or family. Well, I mean, people do that just for the fun of it, too. A little roasting. We roast the ones we love. Put down your accomplishments. Make you feel like you're unable to make decisions. Use intimidation or threats to gain compliance. Tell you that you're nothing without them. Well, in Johnny Depp's case, it's probably largely true. Treat you roughly, grab, push, pinch, shove, or hit you. Call you several times at night or show up to make sure you are where you said you'd be. Use drugs or alcohol as an excuse for saying hurtful things or abusing you. Blaming you for how they feel or act. Well, I mean, I think Amber Heard might be a little bit responsible for how Johnny Depp feels. I'm just saying, I think, yeah, okay. Prevent you from doing the things you want, like spending time from friends or family. The National Domestic Violence Hotline similarly defines domestic violence as relationship abuse or intimate partner violence as behavioral patterns used by one partner to control another partner in a relationship. 699 from Tim, who says, don't these behaviors also define AEH's behavior? Yep, but they love their double standards, though. Men can never be victims. If her op-ed was titled accurately, I was the victim of abuse, but I gave way more than I got. That's true. That's very, very true. That's very, very true. To identify abuse, the National Domestic Victim Hotline utilizes a visual diagram of tactics known as the Duluth model. Yes, the Duluth model says that men cannot be victims. So they are following the Duluth model through and through, which is a sexist model. The Duluth model says that women are always the victim and men are always the perpetrators. So if they're using the Duluth model, no wonder that they're a bunch of sexist assholes. There's the text on screen. Okay, we got more text on screen than we did before. We're making progress. Yay. I like this so that we get the text on screen. It's nice for the super chat recognition. Oh, and here's a picture of the Duluth model. The power and control wheel from the Duluth model. It says right here, utilizing male privilege. Barf. Utilizing male privilege, treating her like a servant, making all the big decisions, acting like master of the castle, being one to define the men's and women's roles. They have a real problem with men, don't they? They have a real problem with men, don't they? Heaven forbid that a man feel like he's the master of his own castle, right? Lord. By design, the power and control wheel has 8 spokes, each designed to categorize patterns of actions that individual uses to intentionally control or dominate his intimate partner. Dominate whose intimate partner? Dominate his intimate partner. His intimate partner. Three of the spokes focus on using coercion and threats, using intimidation, and using emotional abuse, all of which are consistent with other national and international organizations. The power and control wheel. Are we breaking on the wheel? Is that what we're doing? We're breaking men on the wheel? I bet we are. Is that what we're doing? We're breaking men on the wheel? Wow. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but wow. Okay. The power and control wheel illustrates how coercive, non physical behaviors are central to domestic abuse. In recognition of this, states including California, where Depp and Heard live together, have added coercive control definition to abuse statistics. Well, if California is doing it, we're A-okay. Oh, God. Even the parties' respective experts, Dr. Shannon Curry and Dr. Dawn Hughes, agree. $10 from JoJo says, I find it interesting. A lot of people immediately say abuse is man or woman. There's just as many women on men abuses. There might be. I think it's underreported. And I think women's abuses are often non-physical, but they can be physical. But there is like the stereotype of the woman who like breaks plates and stuff like that. So like there is physicality as a stereotype with certain women, some women models and stuff, and like throwing things and physical abuse. And also psychological and verbal, I think, is true too. Psychological aggression includes threats like slamming your hand on the table, punching the wall, cursing and screaming, all actions that cause the victim to feel afraid and feel intimidated. Man, I like these people less and less with every word they write. Dr. Hughes testified, all that red pill and MGTOW stuff. It is not the desired reaction when I read this, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe the MGTOW people had it right, because like these people are just pissing me off. Dr. Curry, Mr. Depp's expert, testified that intimate partner violence is abuse that can be psychological from one partner to another in an intimate relationship. She also agreed without qualification. Domestic abuse could absolutely be verbal and could certainly be emotional. In short, there is a broad consensus that abuse is not limited to physical violence. Instead, the law and scholarly literature recognize the impact of verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse. Accordingly, the jury was plain wrong to disregard Depp's act of non-physical violence in determining whether her statement became a violent behavior. Does anyone happen to know when the deadline for amici briefs is due? Does anyone happen to know when the amici briefs are due? Off the top of their head, because at this point, I'm half tempted to write an amici brief calling out bullshit for several pages. I still have a Virginia bar license. Anyone happen to know when they're due? Do I have time to write a brief? It'll be snarky, but that's okay. I can do snarky. I still have a bar number. Allowing the verdict to stand creates a harmful, chilling effect on abuse victims seeking help. Due to the highly publicized nature of the trial, the ramifications of the verdict. I'll get Drex to help me write it. That'll be good. I'll get Drex to help me write it as a co-author. I'll file it. That should end real well for everyone involved. Yeah, that's good. Things are happening over here. Due to the highly publicized nature of the trial, the ramifications of the verdict, if allowed to stand, will extend far beyond the case alone. Coupled with the intense misheard retaliation, Misheard faced inside and outside the courtroom because she's a fucking liar. She is a lying liar who lies. Could be that. The verdict will have widespread chilling effects on survivors of domestic violence seeking to exit abusive relationships, get help, or seek out against abuse. Wow. These people really are literally about Me Too. These people are literally Me Too. They literally believe all women. Literally believe all women, or at least the convenient ones, the ones whose claims will further our political interests. I'll put Rob's bar number on it without telling him. Lol. No, I won't do that. That would be really, really wrong. Lol. That was a joke. Me filing it, maybe less so. I'll have to find out what they're doing. I have 10 days. I'll see what I can do. That's a lot. Due to the highly publicized nature of the trial, the ramifications of the verdict, if allowed to stand, will extend far beyond this case alone. Coupled with the the intensive retaliation they've received for being a lying liar, this will cause women to fear getting help. The chilling effects will be clear. First, victims may avoid seeking legal redress, such as protective orders. I'm going to file an amicus brief on behalf of Amber Heard's poo. I'm a lawyer retained to file. I'm a lawyer that has been hired by Amber Heard's poo to file this amicus brief. Issue 1. I, the poo, have been defamed. I am a good poo. Just because it came out for Amber Heard doesn't mean you should think any less of me. Lol. Issue 2. Okay. Issue 2. No. Second, abusers may feel emboldened to engage retaliatory through actual or threatened litigations against victims, further subjecting the victims to their abuser's control and crippling them both emotionally and financially. Third, the verdict amplifies an environment where victims are doubted and their credibility is questioned, discouraging them from pursuing legal relief and undermining their ability to obtain it. These issues are detailed below. The bee fish. Yes. The verdict discourages domestic abuse survivors from seeking protective orders. Does it? Protective orders are a critical tool in the fight against domestic violence because they are proven to deter physical violence, keep victims safe, and reduce the severity of future abuse. Studies have shown they also confer psychological benefits to victims. The challenge statements at issue do not mention the May 2016 protective order. It definitely came during the trial. Ms. Heard obtained during Depp more than 2 years before op-ed was published, but Mr. Depp's legal team was intent on framing the very act of seeking protective order as the heart of the injury for which they sought redress. Well, not exactly. Not exactly, but it goes to show she's a lying liar who lies. They obviously had to deal with it. Deal with it because it was a basis for her claim, right? They obviously had to address it. During opening statements, Depp's attorney stated that after Heard filed for the restraining order, Depp's name was forever associated with the image of an innocent, battered woman. Counsel for Depp further described how the acts of Heard's obtaining a restraining order forever changed Depp's life and reputation through the resulting media storm. Indeed, while Depp's trial team occasionally referenced the statements in the op-ed upon which his defamatory claims were based, time and again they made clear that the true origin of the lawsuit was Miss Heard filing for a restraining order. Mr. Depp's success at positioning a protective order as the root of his alleged financial and reputational downfall will chill victims from seeking protective orders. Oh my God. Oh my God. Many abuse victims will likely come to question whether seeking legal redress or protection is worth the risk of having to face separate or protracted legal proceedings and potential liability, forcing them to relive their trauma at tremendous personal or financial cost. Wow. Domestic violence advocates. I need a beer. I wonder if I could text my dad, please bring me a beer. Well, domestic violence advocates have discussed extensively how Depp v. Heard may cause victims of abuse to shy away from seeking legal recourse due to the retaliation, harassment, and credibility attacks they face. This chilling effect will have devastating consequences for victims of abuse due to their well-established benefits protective orders provide for people facing domestic abuse. I would also like to remind people that restraining orders don't necessarily stop abusers. It's not Castle Rock. It's Winnebago versus DeShawnee. Yeah. Winnebago versus DeShawnee, U.S. Supreme Court. Domestic restraining orders don't necessarily stop. Yeah. Okay. Violations of protective orders may result in civil contempt or even criminal charges, thereby acting as a powerful deterrent. Yeah. Studies have shown protective orders are key in the prevention of domestic violence and may substantially reduce physical violence of victims face. Crucially, one study regarding protective orders demonstrated that victims who sought protective orders reported significantly lower levels of subsequent physical abuse and threats of abuse, regardless of whether they were actually granted the protective order. Okay, so you don't even need the protective order. That's how magical they are. Also, by the way, not for nothing, but the law should deter people from getting domestic violence restraining orders if those restraining orders are based on shit. Like, you shouldn't be able to just get restraining orders against people willy-nilly, which seems like more true than not. Most courts seem to grant them out kind of like candy. And these have real impacts on people, including, incidentally, to their firearm rights. So the law should absolutely dissuade people from filing false claims, including false domestic violence restraining order claims. I'm not sure why I needed to say that, but apparently I do. If you're filing bullshit, the law should punish you. Yeah. The National Institute of Justice, the research arm of the DOJ, has similarly recognized that protective orders may deter abusers from committing further acts of abuse and reduce the severity of abuse. Beyond the actual reduction of violence, there are psychological benefits to protective orders, as victims may view the legal system as a means of regaining some of the power they lost due to abuse, or perhaps just gaining power not lost due to abuse, just power they'd like to have. Indeed, the NIJ notes how the research constantly finds that victims largely express satisfaction with civil orders, even if the orders are violated by their abusers. In Virginia, protective orders offer many avenues to shield those abused, and it's crucial that victims continue to access these resources. The core purpose of the protective order statute is to protect the victims of domestic violence. A judge on a juvenile and domestic relations court may, for example, issue emergency protective orders that grant household members possession of the premises occupied by the parties, thus ensuring the victims has a safe place to go because the quote-unquote perpetrator has been kicked out of their own home. So they have a safe place to go, but what about the guy who's alleged abused? Well, we don't care about him. So you can be kicked out of your own home. Virginia courts recognize that protective orders are needed to ensure the safety of the abused. The chilling effects of this verdict stand to impact thousands of Virginians who have secured protective orders by reducing their willingness to obtain or hold them. Well, it won't impact any of the Virginians who have secured the orders with respect to their willingness to obtain them. So that sentence is just factually wrong because you wrote it sloppily. I can guarantee you that none of the thousands of Virginians who have secured protective orders will be impacted by reducing their willingness to obtain the protective orders. Okay. Allowing the trial court verdict to stand threatens to undermine this critical source of relief by deterring victims who fear retaliation, many of whom pursue protective orders pro se. The consequences will be widespread, given that as many as 2 million protective orders are currently in effect nationwide. That's a lot of protective orders. That's one for every, what, like 150 adults? Maybe a little bit more than that. 160 adults? That's a lot. That's one out of like every 80 relationships, really? I mean, okay. Some victims may choose to dissolve their protective orders, and future victims may choose not to pursue them at all. The verdict emboldens retaliation and defamation lawsuits, further chilling victims. If allowed to stand, the success of Johnny Depp's retaliation strategy will embolden abusers to engage in legal abuse, or more to the point, engage in legal redress, because Johnny Depp was wronged. He was wronged. You assholes. Mr. Depp followed a playbook increasingly employed by powerful individuals to retaliate against those who accuse them of abuse when it's false. Prominent artists, athletes, and business executives are among those who have filed defamation lawsuits in response to allegations of sexual misconduct. Well, look at that. Men actually standing up for themselves and defending their rights. It's some sort of dark reality we have where men actually standing up and saying, no, I am not an abuser. You have lied. And all the women are like, oh my God, the man is standing up for himself. He's standing up for his own rights. Why? Dear God, why? Ah! This brief is built on so much sexism. It's like I don't even know how we get to these levels of sexism, to be honest. This is a lot of sexism. You know, I have to say, this is a lot of sexism. Okay, we can finish this. In case you're wondering what I'm doing at this point, I'm just stealing myself. Critically, however, the use of retaliatory defamation lawsuits extends well beyond celebrity spotlight. It has been a strategy through which Perpetrators lock victims into years of abuse. By tying up victims into years of retaliatory legal abuse and defamation litigation, oh my God, the men are defending themselves. Why won't someone think of the women's? And thus attacking their credibility. Dude. Attacking the woman's credibility? That's the problem? She's saying that, this guy's an abuser. Then her credibility is a little bit on issue. His credibility is obviously on issue. Her credibility is on issue. But this is literally believe all women, literally, because the sin is bringing her credibility into doubt. Never mind his credibility. I also like how this paper completely ignores woman on woman domestic violence. It's been a while since I know, but is it true or not, or am I making this up, that women on women have the highest percentage of domestic violence? Like more women on women relationships have domestic violence than other types of relationships. Am I making that up? I know it's not higher absolutely, but it's higher by a relative percentage. Yeah. So this article apparently completely fails to deal with that reality, because that's inconvenient, I guess. I guess we have to find out which one is the man in the woman on woman relationship, and then we blame him. Also, if the man in the relationship suddenly says, "I'm a woman," is he? Because can I get myself some of this privilege? Like I'm accused of battering someone. It's like, he abused me. You mean her? Dun dun dun. What is a woman? A woman is a person who identifies as being a woman who is a person who identifies as being a woman who identifies a person as being a woman who identifies. Okay, anyways. When a victim has left an abusive relationship, previous messages of abuse may no longer be accessible. Thus, abusers may turn to legal abuse to continue their cycle of violence, or in the alternative, defend their rights, which is not a conception that has entered your mind at all. It is well known that many abusers use litigation to harass and control ex-spouses. Oh, thank you very much, Rabid One. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I have a long way to go on the weight front, but thank you for that encouragement. Indeed, abusive litigation in domestic violence context has been recognized by state litigators who acknowledge that the legal system unwittingly becomes another avenue that abusers exploit to cause psychological, emotional, and physical devastation, and can be a means for an abuser to exert and reestablish power and control over a domestic violence survivor. In addition to defamation lawsuits, legal abuse may occur in the context of dissolutions, legal separations, parenting plan actions or modifications, and protective orders, or even through false reports about victims to child welfare or immigrant authorities. False reports. Oh my God. False reports. Oh. And that's citing that's not right. Their citation is wrong. Okay, that's just a wrong footnote. But they're so close to learning something that there can be the concept of false reports. The reason I say it's a false footnote, by the way, is because the footnote is 49. 49 is id, which just means see above, and then 48 is the revised Washington Code. So the revised Washington Code does not say legal abuse may occur in the context of these things. I think that's a mistake. I think they have a mistake in their citation. It happens. In recent years, there's been a sharp rise in the number of defamation lawsuits filed against victims. Maybe men are finally standing up for themselves. Oh my God, the men are standing up. Since 2014, over 100 defamation lawsuits have been brought against individuals raising sexual assault and harassment allegations. The case has been filed at a faster rate since 2017. The men are learning. The men are learning to stand up. Oh my God. This has been documented through studies and also firsthand observation of practitioners. Many of these suits are brought in response to allegations of workplace sexual harassment or sexual assault on college campuses, or where the victims voice their allegations online. The threat of a defamation suit is particularly effective at deterring victims from seeking relief, given power imbalances that are often inherent in abusive relationships. Due to the financial burdens imposed on defendants throughout these lawsuits, survivors may not be able to effectively mount a defense against such a claim. To the 716 of you who are watching, by the way, thank you very, very much for being with me on this beautiful Saturday. I hope you're having a wonderful time wherever you are, and you had a wonderful time celebrating with friends and family, and perhaps, like me, still are celebrating with friends and family. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. If I may ask you to please check your subscribe button and make sure that you're actually still subscribed. And have you given the video a like? Because that helps with the algorithm. The like button helps the channel grow and stuff. And did you know that we have a join button? It's true. We have a join button where you can join as a member. And you get some benefits for a mere 99 cents a month. It's literally the least YouTube will let me charge you. You can become an uncivilian. It's true. Just like all these wonderful people who have scales by their names. How do they get a scale by my name? How can I get scales by my names? Well, it couldn't be easier, my friends. Merely by clicking that beautiful join button for 99 cents a month. Literally the least YouTube will let me charge you. You become an uncivilian. What do you get for these 99 cents a month? Well, you get the scales by your name and you get some wonderful emojis. And we are now experimenting with level 2 for a pre-release benefit of videos. So it will be a sneak peek of videos. So when I get back to my home studio and I start recording again, then for the added benefit, for the tier 2 benefit, you will get the ability to see videos before everyone else. How exciting! You will get to be the first to experience the uncivil joy and before all your friends, because you are just that much cooler than them. So please join Uncivil Law by hitting that beautiful, beautiful subscribe button. It really does help the channel grow. This is my source of income these days, and I really do appreciate everything that all of you guys do for me, and for those of you who are not financially able, just by being here and by participating and hitting the like button, which is free, you also help. So let's get back to the stream. Let's see. These lawsuits have had a harmful emotional impact on survivors. Victims are re-victimized through legal proceedings that force them to recount and describe specific details of their past traumatic abuse. Yeah, heaven forbid, they might actually have to defend their accusations. As in Depp v. Heard, the litigation becomes the mechanism through which the survivor must document and participate in her own spectacular humiliation in front of a judge or jury, as opposed to the humiliation you put the guy through with the restraining order. He's not humiliated, or his humiliation doesn't count. Further, the mere fact that defamation lawsuits filed against victims and resulting questioning they face can tarnish the victim's reputation and self-worth by suggesting they lied. Maybe they did. Maybe their claims should be considered for that possibility. Additionally, the strategy in these defamation lawsuits is to recast the actual perpetrator abuses as victims, thereby increasing the sense of hopelessness, fear, and trauma that victims experience if they feel like legal symptoms can not only protect them, but can be manipulated. Thank you, Kurzaban, for becoming a member. I do appreciate you hitting. Kurtz Bratton. Thanks, Kurtz Bratton, for hitting that beautiful join button. It is appreciated. That the idea of being sued deters many victims from speaking about abuse is supported by scholarship as well as evidence. Survivors now have to determine the likelihood abusers will bring defamation suits or other legal retaliation before deciding whether to seek or abuse. Yeah, maybe your claims will be challenged. Maybe your claims will be challenged. That sounds like something that could definitely happen. The threat of a defamation suit may lead victims into questioning whether they can speak about their abuse at all, even in order to seek the protection they need. If it's true, but if it's lies, you shouldn't be allowed to spread lies, even to seek an order of protection. The verdict below amplifies this dilemma for abuse victims, while reinforcing abusers' efforts to weaponize defamation law as a powerful means of quashing both past and future allegations. The verdict fosters The verdict for Depp fosters a climate of second-guessing victims. Dude, what the fuck are you talking about? What do you mean? Fosters a climate of second-guessing victims. Innocence is presumed, even in a civil case. It's presumed. The default going in is defendant wins. That's the default going in. Defendant wins. Now, in a civil case, you just have to tip the scales ever so slightly for plaintiff to win. But the default at square zero is defendant wins. So, yeah, we might want to question the victim because they're making an accusation that can harm a person's life. A restraining order can harm a person in their career, especially if they have any kind of security clearance or something like that, or other sensitive job. It can pose a problem there. It can pose a problem for firearms rights. It can kick you out of your own home. These are not nothing. They're not nothing. The verdict for Depp, in the face of uncontroverted evidence of abuse, also furthers unrealistic standards in the eye of public as to what qualifies as credible victim testimony. Are you seriously going to say that Amber Heard is credible? That's a hard pill to swallow. Amber Heard is credible? That's a tough one. Thank you, Jojo, for the 10 gift memberships. That's very, very kind. Miss Heard's credibility was continually undermined through a firestorm of negative commentary on social media sites, including TikTok and Twitter. Indeed, Amici are now subject to this firestorm. I'm going to have a stroke or something. I watched the trial. I watched 7 weeks of the trial, and I watched her testimony. And I consider her testimony in light of the other evidence. And in the end, assessment found her to be non-credible. I guess I'm trying to understand this argument, which is probably a mistake, but I'm going to try anyway. The only way this really makes sense is to literally believe all women. I think it's the only way for this argument to make sense. Because the problem is that Heard's credibility is undermined through negative commentary, and that Amici have also been undermined because they're supporting an abuser and are hypocrites and sexist. So the only way for this to make sense is that Hurd and Amici are literally beyond criticism. That's the only way this makes sense. And talk about privilege. That's privilege. Yeah. They are advocating for claims not to be tested. It's the only way for this to make sense. Is it time to look at puppies yet? Is it time to look at puppies yet? The attacks on Miss Heard's credibility frequently employ common victim blaming tropes that demonstrate a fundamental misunderstanding of abuse. Yeah. Okay. We need a puppy break. We need a cute animal break. Aww. Aww. It's a good cat. Where are the rest of my images? Damn it, Reddit. All right. Here is a picture of, I'm not even sure, a squirrel in snow? Chipmunk, maybe? Hamster? Beaver? Opossum, maybe? Having a nice time in the snow. That's cool. Making little snow forts. Ferret? It could be a ferret, yeah. Little snow fort action. That's nice. Here's a cat. Looking very cute. Cat's adorable. Look at those eyes. Look at those whiskers. Cute cat. Here's a skunk. Chilling out. There we go. White ball floof enjoys grooming. There you go. I'm liking the white ball floof. Here are some hamsters eating a watermelon. Okay, we got, this is interesting. Got animals doing tricks on pull-up bars. That's a cool looking pigeon, man. Shit. Damn, that's a cool looking pigeon. Damn. Pig on pig violence. Chicken giving hugs. Aww. All right, back to the brief. The attacks on Miss Heard's credibility frequently employ common victim blaming tropes that demonstrate a fundamental misunderstanding for abuse. These include criticizing Miss Heard for not leaving Depp at the first instance of alleged abuse, and doubting Miss Heard's credibility in the witness stand for displaying too much emotion. Not sure that's really what was going on there, but okay. The fact that she couldn't cry was okay. It's well recognized that victims stay with their abusers for numerous reasons, including the abuser's efforts to exert control and create dependency between the abuser and victim. Staying with the abuser does not indicate a person is being untruthful about abuse that's occurred. No, it doesn't. It's something to consider as part of an analysis. Similar domestic violence victims can respond to overwhelming trauma by being emotionally numb. So you can't lose. You can't lose. If you're emotionally reactive, you're a victim. If you're emotionally numb, you're a victim. Which may impact whether they're viewed as credible, even if they don't demonstrate outward signs of trauma. Other victims may suffer from hyperarousal. That is anxious posture of alertness and reactivity to imminent danger, which may cause victims to suspect subject to unexpected outbursts and lead to victims being perceived as out of control, even a bit crazy. So see, you can't lose. You can't lose. If you're non-reactive, you're a victim. If you're reactive, you're a victim. The highly publicized failure in this case to understand how survivors may respond to alleged abuse perpetuates harmful misconception about victims' credibility that have long since been debunked. Well, even if all that were true, which bullshit, but even if it were true, Amber Heard could have called anybody to the stand. She could have called people that could have done this, and she did to large degrees. It's just that they sucked. I like this one from Rory. It is known, it is well recognized, it is accepted. There's so many passive voice appeals to authority in this. It says a lot about the people writing this. Yeah. I feel that. I feel that. The verdict, if upheld, will further contribute to an environment in which victims' actual experiences of and reaction to abuse, even where supported by uncontroverted evidence and credible testimony, not so sure about that part, may be discounted or second guessed, both in and out of courtroom. Yes. Yes, it can be second guessed. Amazingly. Yes, it can be second guessed. Yes, the stories can be second guessed. Credibility can yes. Yes, they can be second guessed because they're not God. Such credibility discounting may discourage women from continuing to pursue justice or other forms of support. It's already well known that victims may shy away from seeking legal and police assistance when they experience domestic violence out of fear of being disbelieved, and Verk threatens to exacerbate that barrier for relief. For the foregoing reasons that are full of bullshit, we'd like the court to, set aside all that crap. Respectfully submitted, and then here's a list of amici. I will read some of their names so you can see who is signed on to the bullshit. Sanctuary for Families, the Virginia National Organization for Women, DC Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Equality Now, Esperanza United, the Feminist Majority Foundation, the Battered Women's Justice Project, the Women's Equal Justice Project, National Crime Victim Law Institute, the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women, C.A. Goldberg, PLLC, Fearless, Hudson Valley Incorporated, Hope's Door, Media Watch, Movement of Mothers, the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, One Mom's Battle, the Pixel Project, Possibility Seeds, We Spoke, Katharina A. McKinnon, who is a professor of law, Michelle Dauber, Deborah Epstein, Lisa Sales, Renee Adams, Lindsay Boylan, Elizabeth Blackney, Dr. Stephanie Ann Brandt, Cheryl Bratt, Nancy Chi Cantalipo, Lauren Cantinillo, Professor Gillian Cardwick, Dr. Andrew Cincinnati, Julia Deventheria, Julia Deventheria. Nice name, horrible person. Margaret Dew, Katie Hugel, Dr. Holly Jacobs, Dr. Emma Katz, Ashaya Al-Khan, Dr. Shaya Khan, Professor Laurie Cohn, Dr. Inbor Kraus, Tammy Coonan, Julia Lee, Julia Livingston, Lisa McDonald, Dr. Linda McIntosh, Natalie Natsini, Judith Oland, Tashimi Owen, Alexia Polar, Dr. Charlotte Proudman, Dr. Lila Ross, Rita Smith, Rosalind Tolson, Camille Waring, Merle Werner, Sarah Jakob, and Amy Zuring, among others, have sent towards this brief. And apparently this brief contained 10,570 words of crap. All right, so that was fun-ish. I use the word fun loosely, but that was fun. Well, my friends, we've been doing 2 hours, and I need a break. But we will be back later because there is a part 2. There is a part 2. I will give you a sneak preview for those of you who are here all the way. Ooh, sneak preview for those of you all the way. Those of you who are the real fans. Here is brief number 2 by other people. This apparently is coming from Appendix A. Okay, so is there who is this coming from? I don't have Appendix A. It's coming from a whole bunch of people who want to support the First Amendment. So I'm not sure where Appendix A is, but I don't have a copy of that apparently. Oh well, but we can look forward to that. The entities identified in Appendix A who have signed on to this brief fall into 3 primary categories. First, organizations that support a vibrant First Amendment have joined to protect their ability to engage in reporting facts and opinions regarding important issues. Well, if you report actual facts, that'd be great. Which is threatened by the verdict in this case. Second, civil rights and women's groups have joined to address significant diminution of reporting of abuse against women as a result of this verdict. Third, groups assisting persons who have been abused, especially involving intimate partner abuse, have joined to protect their clients from devastating effects of this verdict. In addition, respected authorities in all these areas have been added their voices to the brief. So that is your preview of a letter. That's a preview later. You need to get all of LawTube to join in an amicus brief. I'm not. Yeah, I could put number 2 behind a paywall. That'd be really interesting, but I won't do that. But I definitely need a break. So I'm not sure whether or not we'll do part 2 later tonight, or maybe we'll wait for tomorrow for a special Sunday stream. Spread it out over 2 days. Get the hype going. Gotta figure out how to maximize that grift, right? So maybe we'll be on tonight, maybe with part 2. Maybe we'll be on with something else completely different. Whoa. You don't know. Could be anything, right? But yeah. So I'll just kindly remind all of you, since we're at the end of the stream, if you have not already joined as there's a wrongful death case against Dauber. I didn't know that. I'll have to check that out. If you've not already hit the join button, please remember to hit the join button if you don't have it on your iOS device, but you should, because iOS now, I think, has the join button or members button. But if you don't have it, the bot gives you links from time to time, and you can click on that link to get it, and it is only 99 cents. Fall Guys, no, I'm not on my main PC. I'm on my laptop, so I don't have the processing power for Fall Guys. Check Twitter. You tagged me. Let's see what's going on in Twitter land. Don't see anything yet, but I'll take a look. Thank you very much, Brian, for hitting that beautiful, beautiful join button. I do appreciate it. Okay, guys, I'm going to sign off for now. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Until there, my friends, I hope all is well. I probably won't be home for a couple days yet, so you'll see me streaming from here for probably the indefinite future, which is fine. I'm happy and fed and all the rest of it. I will see you later. I've been Uncivil Law. Until later, my friends, I hope all's well. Cheers, my friends. Goodbye.